What's going on, guys? Welcome to another video, and today we're gonna be talking about something painful, something that is painful to me, painful to my heart, and that is coding. And if you are someone that hates coding just as much as I do, and then you do not want to see it for the rest of your career, then make sure that you stick around, because in this video I'm gonna tell you how I overcame coding classes in engineering school, what my experience was like in the last 10 years very briefly. And not only that, because I'm feeling nice today, I am going to tell you, I'm going to give you some leads, some fields that you can get into, so that way you minimize or even eliminate the chance of you seeing any type of coding. So before we get anywhere, if this is the first time we're meeting, welcome. My name is Alex Isidro, and here on this channel I share engineering, career, and personal development, self-growth content. So if you like this video, make sure that you like it right now, please. It really does help out the channel. It helps me reach more engineers like yourselves, so you can pass the word along. And also make sure that you subscribe to the channel. It really does mean a lot to me. Thank you very much. All right, so now with all that out of the way, the first thing I want to mention is that I have never really got along with coding ever since I was taught the first programming language, which was HTML. That's the first thing I ever was taught in high school. I had to take it, and I sucked at it. At that point, I realized coding was not for me. Fast forward a couple of years, when I made the decision to pick my first major. I majored in computer science, and that was a bad decision. I'm gonna leave a link to the video where I go over my experience on how I overcame it when I decided to change my major in the description of this video. So if you wanna know more about that, you can go watch it in the next video. So when it comes to overcoming classes, you don't have to like these classes. You don't have to enjoy them. You do have to grind them out. You have to put in the work. You have to ask for help. You have to bug the professors, go to the teacher's assistants, spend the time with smart people that like coding. Not only that, but also Google things, YouTube things. Nowadays, you can Google and YouTube your way through pretty much anything. So I'm sure you can do the same thing with coding and coding classes. All right, so now let's jump right into my experience, because I'm pretty sure that's what you're most excited to hear me talk about. And the first thing that I want to mention here is that, to be honest, I never actually looked for a job that did not require coding. It just kind of turned out that way. It turned out that I didn't have to do any coding throughout my whole career. When I was first getting into the field, I was just looking for something that would pay the bills. I just wanted to get a job, and literally I was willing to do whatever it took. I just needed to make money. So I want you to be humble from that sense. Do not be too picky, because if you are too picky when it comes to selecting jobs, once you graduate, the market is already competitive enough. And so you don't want to shoot yourself in the foot being picky and trying to avoid certain jobs that you're not going to like. If anything, you can do it if you get a job that requires coding. Then you can kind of do that for like a year and a half, and then move on to something else that doesn't require coding. So just some disclaimer and some, what would you say, a wise piece of advice here that I wanted to share with you before we jump into my experience. So now, approximately 3 to 4 years into the field, I started working on a system that required both software and hardware development. And I was doing project management back then. And so as a project manager, I was mainly responsible for establishing the requirements of the system, of the software, the hardware. And also I had to manage and establish the schedule, the cost, and reduce or manage any type of risk. So now, as you see, or as you can see from that description, I did not have to do any coding myself. Although I did need to know what the software did, I had to give the requirements to the developers so that way they could go ahead and do it. I did not have to do any coding myself, and I'm very, very grateful for that, because that would have been a disaster. Now, you might be wondering, man, you're so lucky you never had to code. How did you do that? How do I get a job like that? What are some positions that I can look into in order to avoid or even eliminate the chance of me having to code? And I'm glad you're asking that question, because now, after 10 years in the field, now I have an idea, and I can give you some insight and some advice on some fields and tips that you can look into, so that you can avoid or even eliminate the chance of you having to use any sort of coding. And the most important thing that I want to mention here is, of course, for any job that you apply, if you want to know what it takes, if you want to know if you're going to be able to do it, most importantly, look at the job description. The job description is going to tell you everything that you need to know. They're going to tell you what kind of software requirements or what kind of software skills you need to have before you even are considered for the job. So make sure that you don't overlook them and don't just apply to any job out there. Now, of course, after a few years of experience, again, I want to mention that there are some fields that have caught my attention and that I know most likely or most of the time they are going to require you to have some type of coding skills. And so it's these jobs such as developer, programmer, software engineer, data science and data analytics, machine learning, etc. Things along those lines or similar things like that. Most likely they are going to require you to have some type of software skills, programming skills. So make sure that you avoid those. But again, as always, make sure that you check the job description first. Now, before I go into the fields that are going to help you expand your job search for positions that don't require coding, the first thing I want to mention is that the following fields are just going to be some examples. If you want to expand on the number of areas that you can look into on your own, make sure that you look into the specific branches within your discipline to get a better idea of all the fields you can get into. For example, for mechanical engineers, you can look at automotive engineering jobs, you can look at heating, ventilation and air conditioning jobs, you can look at hydraulics engineering, manufacturing. So once you look into those fields for your own specific engineering branch or discipline, then you're gonna find more opportunities available that don't require coding. All right, so now let's actually look at the positions that I personally gathered here in this video, just as an example, just to help you get started with your search for that one position or job that doesn't require coding. The first one is gonna be project management. As I talked about in the past, project management, you talk about schedule, cost, technical requirements, you tell all the people to do the job. Most of the time, generally speaking, but make sure that you actually look at the job description. Again, that's very, very important, guys. For every single one of these fields that I'm about to mention, make sure that you look at the job description. Again, another one, project engineer, test engineer, sales engineer, systems engineer, consulting field, design engineer. Also look into public service, because a lot of the times the state or federal organizations that you deal with, they are going to be contracting the work out to other companies to do the specific work. Also, you could look into logistics. You could look into business, finance. You could look into research and development. So with all these fields being mentioned, the main takeaway from this video, guys, is that I want you to know that you are not doomed if you don't like programming. You are not doomed if you suck at it. Don't think that your success as an engineer is going to rely on having to program at an advanced level. If anything, of course, programming is a useful skill to have. You may be able to use it on your own personal life, on your personal projects, if you want to build websites and stuff like that. I've personally done that. But when it comes to the professional engineering field, there's tons of opportunities out there for you. So if you don't like coding, do not think that you're doomed.